Hi YouTube, this is Interesting Andrew again. So this is a continuation of the Summa Theologica. Um, Last time I worked up until page 70, and now we're going to pick up from there. Uh, I tried doing quite a bit more note taking. I thought maybe just highlighting and stuff would solve it and make it easier and quicker. However, I just found that actually taking notes is superior because then I can put it in my own words and try and translate some of this more difficult text. So we're going to start with question 7 in the infinity of God. So question 7, article 1 is on page 72, and it starts with the question whether God is infinite. Put my bookmark back in there. So, whether God is infinite, the objection that I found most interesting, not necessarily compelling intellectually, but interesting, is objection 1. And so they posed this question, which was, for everything infinite is not perfect because it has parts and matter, but God is most perfect, therefore he is not infinite. So to kind of explain this, um, uh, St. Thomas Aquinas winds up getting into it himself a little bit, but basically they start from a working knowledge that would or theory, which would be that um, basically God would be material or have matter, and therefore anything that would be infinite and it consists of matter would degrade itself by being infinite and stretching out and expanding its bounds. And so I think that the answers to it are really pretty good. And it gives a insight into the historical um, minds and philosophy of the time. And so St. Thomas Aquinas answers, on the contrary, Damascene says, God is infinite, eternal, and boundless. Okay, so based on that quotation, um, there's something missing and somebody's misinterpreting characteristics or qualities of God based on that. So the answer is all ancient philosophers attribute infinitude to the first principle. Okay, um, because some erred concerning the nature of the first principle. As a consequence, they erred concerning its infinity. Forasmuch as they asserted that matter was the first principle, consequently, they attributed a material effect to the first principle, a material infinity to the effect that some infinite body was the first principle of things. And that actually lies in the problem. If you remember earlier, um, maybe question 3, it explained that God doesn't have a body. Um, he would be boundless, infinite, but also he has essence. And so, without physical quality consisting of matter, that is not a problem. Um, because anything, let's just say angelic or spiritual in nature, does not have um, matter within them. And then so the answer continued, which is further on, because it's a series of paragraphs. So I'm kind of piecing it together in a way that I think is, easiest to approach. So continued. Now being is the most formal of things as shown above. Question 4, answer 1, objection 3, or article 1, objective 3. Since therefore the divine being is not being received in anything, but is subsistent, it is clear that God himself is infinite and perfect. So they also already uh, answered the question about God being subsistent, therefore he is not limited, for instance, like matter would be, and can stretch himself to infinity, and still retain his perfection. Um, and again, um, they talk about the divine being is not being received in anything. Um, the philosophers of like the ancient Greeks were under the opinion that the first principle of anything, so point number one, where everything else kind of flows down from, would have been essentially concentrated matter, based on this. Um, and instead of that, it is God in his essence, um, being already infinite. And then from there, he creates matter and it may have limit. For instance, uh, astronomers can suppose that there are limits to our universe. It is not infinite, it has limits. Um, and that they can actually uh, infer its growth rate and then reduce back from when the Big Bang would have started. Uh, Fun note, they found that it's actually accelerating an expansion, which does not line up with a bang. Acceleration just doesn't follow that principle. So that was my favorite bit of question 7. So now to question 8, article 1. This would be on page 81. Whether God is in all things. This is actually a pretty fun conversation, and you'll be able to pick it out before I actually read it out. So their objections are, or I guess the imagined objections for a contrarian argument would be, because God is above all things, he cannot be in all things. Further, what is in anything is contained. Lastly, the demons are beings, but God is not in the demons, for there is no fellowship. For there is no fellowship between light and darkness. 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14. Therefore, God is not in all things. Okay, so the demons thing I thought was pretty interesting and fun. His answer to this is, a thing is wherever it operates, but God operates in all things, according to Isaiah 26:12. You have wrought all our works in us. God is, and that's the end of the quotation or the verse. God is in all things as an agent. So agency is where St. Thomas Aquinas is making the point. Um, so an agent must, as an agent must be joined to that wherein it acts immediately and touch it by its power. Hence, it is proved by Aristotle that the object and the mover must be joined together to actually have some form of a contact between the forces. And then, therefore, as long as the object is preserved in its being, God must be present to it. So God has to be making contact with that being, object, whatever it may be, and then uses his force, his power upon it. It's going back to Newtonian concepts. Lastly, demons, being in their nature deformed, God is not in them except with the addition, inasmuch as they are beings, which was his main quotation. Inasmuch as they are beings, they are created by God as angels initially. And then when they rebelled against God and were cast out of heaven, they obviously have sinned now and are now corrupt. However, God can still compel them under circumstances to do his whatever he wants. For instance, when Jesus was casting out demons, he still has authority over them, being that he created them, even though they are now deformed. And so I think that's pretty interesting. For instance, if you ever watch on YouTube exorcists talking about they can compel them to answer them truthfully because God does still have power over them. And it's only that He allows them to do certain things under His discretion, I guess you would say. For instance, somebody may be, um, holy crap, they may have a demon within them, and then you can cast them out. But, why does God allow that to happen? Well, the priests or other exorcists would say the work that happens because of that and being delivered from that sin um, is essentially kind of like somebody ODing on drugs and then realizing that they need sobriety. And so by allowing it and then forcing them to be exercised from the person allows them to also be in contact with God when that happens and then hopefully um, cause them to want to repent. And so that was a pretty short read. I should say that is one day's worth of reading in my spare time. I plan to continue to just update as I go with more videos when I feel like I have enough material to make at least a 10-minute video. Um, so I will probably just be picking up on question 9, I think, next. Because the rest of question 8 I felt was kind of okay, but not worth uh, our time. And so, yeah, the next one, question 9, would be the immutability of God. And then we'll proceed from there, see how much ground I can cover, and then put into a video template. So thank you very much. I hope you're enjoying this. I know I am in a just even being able to take notes and then report it back verbally has allowed me to digest material better rather than just reading. We can all read and then forget what the last page said or last couple pages. You can drift off. So this holds me accountable. Hopefully somebody finds something so out of the normal uh, wheelhouse for culture, being theology and especially theology from the 13th century. Intriguing. So thank you guys. This has been interesting, Andrew, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.